Welcome back to Tam. Today we're making this guy. If you don't know what it is, let me tell you. It's a flourless chocolate cake with toasted pecans covered in this awesome meringue. It's hot out of the oven. It is incredible. Oh my goodness, let me talk you through and also give you loads of amazing, I hope, tips for how to do Pesach baking. Pesach baking is slightly different to regular baking. We just have to go about it in a slightly different mind frame. So as we make this cake, a lot of Pesach baking tips are gonna make their way in. So not just for this awesome cake, which you should all make because it is delicious, but also coming up a whole bunch of Pesach baking tips. So let's get started right now. So let's get on with making our flourless chocolate cake with meringue topping. First things first, my oven is set at 180, and what I've already done is toasted my pecans. And this is tip 1 in Pesach baking. Don't skip steps. If it tells you to toast your pecans or use whole ones, do it. There's so few ingredients in a Pesach cake that every single one of them counts. So that extra step of toasting nuts just makes them nuttier and delicious and brings out all those awesome pecan-y flavors. So I toasted the pecans. What I have here is 85 grams of toasted pecans, which I then chop. Trust me on this. Buy the pecan halves, toast them, chop them yourself. It'll make all the difference. I'm going to remove 2 tablespoons of the toasted pecans and reserve them for later. So that's done. Next, I have my 9 by 13, 20 by 30 centimeters, 9 by 13 inches. I've oiled it and then I lined it with a piece of paper. Again, everything you do in Pesach baking needs to be done with a little bit more care because there's so little that goes into it that there's lots of places where you can't mask it with good flavoring or great flour. Every single thing you do is important. So what I have here is 250 grams of butter. You could use margarine instead, and 250 grams of dark chocolate. I use 70%, but anything between 60 and 75 will do. And I'm gonna melt them together in the microwave. You could do this over a pot of simmering water as well, but doing it in a large bowl. So we're gonna go melt. Our chocolate is melted, gorgeous, and it actually needs to cool down for a few minutes, which is perfect because we need to talk about eggs. Eggs is one of the most important aspects of Pesach cooking. I have a nephew who's allergic to eggs. It makes his mother's life very challenging because she loves to bake. So more on that some other time. I have 6 eggs here, and here's the key. They are room temperature. Very important. If you try to add loads of volume to eggs that are cold from the fridge, it's gonna take a long time and the egg is gonna start breaking down rather than be filled with lots and lots of air, which is what we're going for. So I've got here 50 grams of white granulated sugar going in there and 165 grams of light brown sugar, which is a bit softer and it's gonna add some chewiness to our cake. And here's the deal. We're gonna whisk this guy for about 7 or 8 minutes until it's tripled in volume, super light, looks kind of like mayonnaise. Yes, much easier to do with a stand mixer, but completely, totally doable with a handheld one as well. Electric mixer is a requirement around here. So we're gonna let this guy whip up 7 to 8 minutes until we've tripled in volume. But again, key point 1 was don't skip steps. Toast nuts if nuts need to be toasted. Step 2, eggs need to be at room temperature. Do not attempt this with freezing cold eggs. The result at the very end of the bake is gonna be very disappointing. So let's whip this up, 7 to 8 minutes, here we go. It's been about 7 minutes, so we're gonna turn, okay, let me just show you what we've got here. We've got this what's called the ribbon. So what you want to check, how do you know that it's 3 times the volume or have enough volume? Let me just take this out and bring it here. So check out how much volume I have there. And if I just wrap it around, the ribbon holds for a few seconds before dissipating in the rest of the mix. So that tells me that my eggs and sugar have enough volume, which is awesome. And now I'm going to mix this into the chocolate. I'm gonna do it in 3 additions. The first one, I'm really going to lighten up the chocolate as much as possible. So I'm not gonna be super careful with the air that I've put in here and knocking it out. So there we go, I added in I would say 1/4 of the mix, and I'm just going to whisk it in and make sure that all the chocolate gets some of this egg mixture and it's all lightened up and loosened up, and it'll be much easier to mix in the rest of this egg mixture without deflating it too much. So we want to keep that volume. There's no baking powder, there's no baking soda, though you're allowed to use this on Pesach. You just need to look for the ones that are kosher for Pesach. But this cake in specific doesn't have it because there's nothing to rise other than, you know, some chocolate and eggs. So all the volume of the cake is in the egg. All that air we've just kind of driven in, we want to keep it. So with my second addition of eggs, I'm going in a little bit lighter, and I'm going to keep on mixing until there are no streaks of egg left and it's all chocolatey, but it's going to be a much lighter color than the melted chocolate and butter was. So I'm going to keep on mixing and then we'll speak again. Our chocolate mix is nearly ready. One last bit, which is our toasted chopped pecans. So they're going in as well, and we're gonna fold them in, and then we're almost ready to bake our flourless chocolate cake. It smells incredible, and I think that's because of the freshly toasted pecans. They just add so much nuttiness and texture, and this cake actually needs that texture. So I'm gonna pour that into my prepared tin, and we're gonna bake it at 180 degrees Celsius, which is 350 Fahrenheit. But here's the thing, if you have a fan oven, you're gonna need to lower your temperature by about 20 degrees. So to 160 Celsius or 320 Fahrenheit. So either 180, 350 no fan, or 160, 320 with a fan. And this is gonna need to bake for 30 minutes. But about 7-8 minutes before the end, we're gonna have to start working on our meringues. So keep an eye on the clock. This is going in for an initial 30 minutes, but about 7 minutes before the end, so 23 minutes in, we're gonna start working on the meringue topping. So there is our flourless chocolate cake about to go into the oven. It is so good. I cannot wait for you guys to taste it. Our cake's been in the oven for about 23 minutes, and here's our next tip. You know that part in the recipes when they tell you to clean out your bowls when you're gonna whisk up egg whites so there's no grease whatsoever left, and sometimes we kind of like let it go? Pesach, you can't let it go. Again, you need every single bit of volume you can get. So what I do is, after I've washed out the bowl, the spatula, the whisk, I actually put a drop of vinegar on a paper towel and I go through everything again just to make sure that everything is as clean as possible. So into our bowl goes 3 egg whites, again, room temperature, super important, a pinch of salt, and I'm gonna start whisking until foamy. Once foamy, I've got here 1 cup, 200 grams of super fine sugar. It's called caster here in the UK. And I'm gonna add it 1 tablespoon at a time until I have these glossy, gorgeous peaks. If you can't get super fine sugar, which it's possible that wherever you are, it's not there, you're gonna need to leave yourself 10 minutes rather than 5 for this phase, because it's gonna take longer for the sugar to dissolve into the egg whites and to get those glossy cakes. So let's do it. We're gonna get to the foam stage. It's already there. Grab a spoon, not a fork, and start adding 1 tablespoon at a time. This should take about 5 minutes, at which point I'll be ready to take our flourless chocolate cake out of the oven. And then we're gonna keep on going, 1 tablespoon at a time. Our cake is out. It has this amazing volume, which is awesome. Here's our meringue. So I'm gonna actually use 2 spatulas to help me get the meringue onto the cake, because what I don't want to happen here is to deflate the cake in any way. So I'm very carefully gonna plop meringue all over, and then with the help of the heat of the cake, start spreading it around. So we're gonna keep on doing that. So as you could see, meringue is there. I'm gonna use the back of the spatula to just spread it out. And one of my meringue clouds was a little too heavy, so it's already starting to crush the cake underneath, which is fine, but as gently as possible, I'm gonna try to get the meringue to cover the surface of the cake. So I'm gonna concentrate on that, and then one final step and back into the oven we go. All right, the meringue is spread, and as I said, just a couple more steps. So I have half a tablespoon of cocoa powder, and I'm just gonna dust it over this cake. There we go, dust it away. I have those reserved 2 tablespoons of pecans. They're gonna get sprinkled on top. And then I'm gonna use a knife to lightly marble this topping in. I say lightly because, as you'll see, your meringue layer isn't very thick, and the cake itself is right underneath the surface. So rather than stick the knife point in, just use the blade to marble the surface. And then this is going back in the oven for 25 minutes, so the cake gets a chance to finish baking and the meringue gets dried and crispy. And what you have here is a cocoa swirled meringue topping on top of this awesome flourless chocolate cake. Oh, yes, this is what Pesach is all about. Fantastic desserts. Into the oven, 25 minutes, and then there's another wait, but it's totally worth it. And there it is. Oh my goodness, it just came out of the oven. Check it out. How stunning is that? What you're looking for is a meringue that is dry and crispy, and it's gonna fall a little bit in the center as it cools down, but it does need a full hour of cooling in the tin before you move it, before you cut into it. It can be made up to 2 days before you're ready to serve it, but that is our flourless chocolate pecan cake with a meringue topping, all ready for Pesach. I cannot wait. Oh my goodness. Yes, make flourless chocolate cake with meringue topping with toasted pecans, and see you all soon.